Hello again and welcome back to SimpleBibleProphecy.com. I'm Pete, that's Neb, and that's The Rock. We're on lesson 2 where we're going to study the history of Nebuchadnezzar Statue. If this is your first time here, I invite you to go back to lesson 1 and the introduction. It'll give you a better idea of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. For those of you who've already been here, thank you for returning. I know you're not coming back for the entertainment value, but you have a passion for Bible prophecy like I do. So let's delve right in. If you remember last we talked about Nebuchadnezzar Statue is the outline of the future. So let's go back and look at Nebuchadnezzar Statue. And if you remember, as Daniel did the interpretations, he broke the statue into 5 parts. There was the head of gold, there were the arms and chest of silver, there was the belly and thighs of bronze, there were the legs of iron, then the feet and toes of iron and clay. There was another part that was separate from the statue, that was the stone that was cut without hands. And if you remember, it came down and struck the statue on the feet and destroyed the statue. Now we're going to go back and study the history of the statue. Fortunately, we do have history to look back on, and we know from history that Babylon came first. Now if we look at our map, the Babylonian Empire, like we studied in lesson 1, was basically a small empire. It wasn't that big. It didn't cover a whole lot of ground. Basically the Middle East, which included Jordan, Iraq, Israel, Syria, some of Turkey, some of Egypt, and some of Saudi Arabia. We also know that the Babylonian Empire lasted approximately 90 years. It started in 628 BC and lasted through 536 BC. Now King Nebuchadnezzar actually didn't start his reign until about 605 BC. And that was at the height of the Babylonian Empire reign. Now, in looking at our statue, I'm going to give you a contribution that each empire on this statue made to the first coming of Christ. And the contribution that the Babylonians made was that they captured Israel and turned Israel's hearts back to God. Now, some of you are thinking right now, how could a loving God use Babylon and conquer Israel the way he did to turn their hearts back to him? Well, you know what? I have found in reading the Bible from start to finish, from the very beginning to the very end, that God is a loving God and he will do whatever he has to do to restore relationships. It starts at the beginning from Adam and goes all the way down to Revelation. It's about restoring relationships, bringing us back to him. I've kind of diverted off a little bit, but you have to understand, God is a loving God, and he will do what he has to do to bring us back to him. To get back on subject, as we look at our statue, we can see that the head of gold represents Babylon. But there was a second kingdom that came later on, right after the Babylonian kingdom, and actually they conquered Babylon. You can read about that in Daniel chapter 5, a very interesting story that I think you would enjoy. So the Medo-Persians conquered the Babylonian Empire. As we look at our map, we can see that the Medo-Persian Empire was much larger than the Babylonian Empire. It covered a lot more territories over there towards the east. Now the Medo-Persian Empire eventually became the Persian Empire. Somehow the Medes got lost in the mix somewhere. To break down the Persian Empire a little bit further, they originated out of what we call modern day Iran. And actually Iran, up until a few years ago, used to call themselves Persians. Getting back to our statue, we know that the arms and chest of silver was represented by the Medo-Persian Empire, and through history we know that the Persians eventually took over. That empire lasted from 536 BC to 336 BC, 200 years. Now their major contribution to the first coming of Christ was that the Persians issued decrees to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. And actually we will study this more in future lessons, as these are prophecies that directly affect the outline. I'm really looking forward to that. As we look further down the statue, we can see after the Persian Empire came the belly and thighs of bronze, just as Daniel had predicted. Through history, we know this to be Greece. There were many battles fought between the Persians and the Greeks, one of those battles being what you saw in the movie 300. But it wasn't until after Alexander the Great took over and led the Greeks to victory. And in my opinion, he's the greatest military leader of all time, and a very interesting study if you'd like to look into it. Now the Grecian Empire conquered the Persian Empire, And they lasted from 336 BC to 63 BC. 273 years. Just a little bit longer than the Persians did. Now, if you look at the Grecian Empire map, you can see that they had pretty much similar territory as to what the Persian Empire had, maybe a little bit smaller in some areas, but larger in others. Greece's contribution to the first coming of Christ was actually done by Alexander the Great. Not only was he a great military leader, he was a great political leader. And he knew that one of the biggest challenges empires had after they conquered these territories was the language barrier. So Alexander the Great actually developed his own language, and he called it Koine Greek. And after he defeated each territory, he made it mandatory that these people learn this language. This helped out, and when Jesus' time, and even after Jesus left, that all the territories understood one common language, Koine Greek. The New Testament is written in Koine Greek, and that helped spread the gospel. So after Alexander the Great died, he had no sons. He left the territory off to 4 generals, and Greece was actually split up into 4 different territories. But after the Grecian Empire came our 4th empire, the Roman Empire. As we look back at our statue, we can see that the Roman Empire was actually the legs of iron, just as Daniel had prophesied. And it lasted from 63 BC to 476 AD, 539 years. As we look at our map, we can see that the Roman Empire was more concentrated towards the west than the east. Now, they still had control over some of the Middle East countries and nations, but it mostly concentrated towards the west, more of Europe and the northern part of Africa. The western half is represented by mostly European countries: Spain, France, Czechoslovakia, Italy, Austria, Germany, Bosnia, Hungary, Great Britain, Portugal, and Switzerland. There's even some on the northern continent of Africa in Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and some of Libya. Now, the eastern half of the empire is represented by mostly countries of the Middle East, those including Turkey, Syria, Egypt, Iraq, Libya, Jordan, Lebanon, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. Also Israel, and then there's Albania, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Greece. Most of the countries in the Eastern Empire have a common denominator in this day and time. I'll let you figure out what that is, as this is very important in the future. As we continue to look at the statue, we see that both legs are equally important to the statue, the Western and the Eastern Empire. Most prophecy teachers concentrate on the Western Empire. However, most of the Old and New Testament happened in the Eastern Empire. So why the change? Why the sudden focus on the West? Both the West and the East will play major roles in the future. This cannot and will not be denied. Ask yourself this question: how can these nations not be majorly involved in the future in the Eastern Empire? Through history, this is what we know. The Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, the Grecian Empire, then the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire was never conquered. It actually imploded. And there's never been another nation like it since. Of course, we have the United States. We're a very powerful nation and have been for a long time. And are we in Bible prophecy? Actually, we are, but we're not represented on the statue. Since the Roman Empire has imploded, there have been several attempts to try and reestablish the Roman Empire. Napoleon tried it, Hitler even tried it, but none succeeded because it wasn't in God's prophecy. Now, there is a pause between the Roman Empire and the feet of iron and clay, and we'll go over that in the future. It's just not given here right now in Daniel's statue. As we go back to our statue, I'm going to add a little bit more information. We know that the head of gold, or Babylon, was established in 628 BC, and that the last kingdom to date is the Roman Empire, and it lasted to 476 AD. Approximately 1100 years have passed. Now, we also know through other scriptures in the Bible that there is a pause in between the Roman Empire and the feet and toes of iron and clay. If you notice, we really haven't discussed times and dates. We've discussed it from a historical perspective, but nothing as far as prophecy. That's because when God gave us Nebuchadnezzar statue, he didn't give any time. What he was doing was he was giving us the overall blueprint of what's going to happen in the future. Does he give time and dates? Oh, you bet. And we're going to discuss those. We're going to discuss those that happened in the past and how they came true to the very day that God predicted. And then we're going to discuss time and dates in the future that are set off by certain events, stuff that we need to look for, clues that God's given us. God wants us to know the future, but you have to know where to look. You have to bring those pieces of the puzzle together. We're only on the first piece. We have a lot more pieces to put together. It's going to take a little time. This is not something that you can learn in an hour, but you're going to have a good foundation. And that's where we're at right now. We're standing on a great foundation. I look forward to our next lesson where we'll start talking about the future and giving us a base and a good foundation for the future when we talk about the feet of iron and clay. Then eventually we'll get to the stone cut without hands. It's going to be some exciting times ahead. Right now, we're just covering the main subjects. When we get into the details, there's going to be some eye-opening experiences. I hope you had some eye-opening experiences so far, and I look forward to seeing you next time here on simplebibleprophecy.com. And remember what Jesus said in John 14:19. Because I live, you shall also live. Thank you.